Certainly, many of us are aware of the metaphor of life as being sometimes like a storm, where the hits just keep on coming. But for many people, my patients included, it often feels like a storm that's never going to end. In reality, there will be calms between the storms, and in a healthy life, these calms should outnumber the typhoons. But what if the storm seems to be never ending? Often people see two options. One, they tread for dear life and manage to just barely keep their heads above water. All the while, the wind, the waves are continuously battering them, slowly exhausting their energy or reserve. Or two, they can give up and drown, usually after a long and tiring battle to remain afloat. Being oriented more towards dialectical behavioral therapy, I prefer a middle ground. But is there a middle ground between these two extremes of endlessly treading versus giving up? Well, I think so. Now, before I go on, I'm Dr. Vint Blackburn, and I really enjoy helping people better understand mental health and health in general, because to me, they're the same thing. But I also need to know that these videos are actually helpful and useful, and I would really, really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to my channel. I took about a year off making videos, and I'm hoping to be more active again, but part of that will depend on your feedback, including liking and subscribing and leaving comments as well. Now, it's pretty easy to understand how life can feel like a series of unrelenting storms, with waves that just keep smashing us in the face. And at some point, we're going to ask ourselves, why do we keep treading water? And this is perfectly understandable, as every human being has only a finite amount of resilience. It also tends to be very disheartening, especially when one does not see the end of the storm in sight. But there's a third option to dog paddling for our lives and giving up out of exhaustion, and that is learning to surf. Now, as I'm sure you already know, I'm a big proponent of therapy that focuses on skills. But what does it mean in the context of surviving the storm? Living in Hawaii for many years, I used to go to the North Shore during the rough, stormy weather to watch the surfers take on the big waves. Actually, while working in the Honolulu Star Bulletin, I took the opportunity to go out with one of the best-known surf photographers, actually going out into the ocean with him, bobbing up and down in the tumult, just in order to catch the best and most dramatic images. Well, this day the waves were between 6 and 10 feet, and honestly, this may have been the most terrifying experience of my life, equal to the time I almost got hit by lightning. That's another story. To my eye, these walls of water were overwhelming. The noise was explosive. The energy was unsurmountable. I only lasted for about 15 minutes before scrambling to the safety of the shore, and not before feeling quite beat up and exhausted. But this is the very environment where the surfer thrives. They've essentially learned to turn something quite overwhelming and terrifying into a manageable challenge. Now, I'm not saying that one is going to find joy or pleasure in the horrific things that often assail them, but if given no choice, one is far better off learning to navigate these issues. So surfing is not treading water, because it takes a lot less energy, but it does take a lot more skill. It's also true that mastery does not come easily. When learning to surf, you'll be thrown off the board, far more often than not. You'll get discouraging lungfuls of water, and it's easy enough to give up and say, I'm never going to get this, but you can. The metaphor of surfing is the idea that through therapy and practicing skills, such as radical acceptance, we learn to better navigate the storm. We conserve energy as opposed to wasting it. But it's important to remember that learning to surf can be really, really hard. It's hard to tolerate the hits when we fall off the board. It's hard to overcome our deeply seated fears and anxieties. And yet, it may be absolutely necessary if we are going to persevere. Believe it or not, storms don't last forever. But we either outlast them or they outlast us. Learning to handle these times skillfully, learning to avoid self-defeating distortions, learning to surf, can greatly extend the time that we can keep our heads above water. In the end, it may be what allows us to make it to the other side. Now, you don't have to believe that the situation is black and white, and that's the most important thing. And with the help of therapy, you can find that middle path. You can learn to surf. I'm Dr. Vint Blackburn, and I hope you find these videos at least thought-provoking. But please, 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 like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Also, remember, mental health and physical health, they're the same thing.